5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend and to submit
Without
extraneous
objection.
material for the record. I rise today as a founding co-chair of the 39-member Out of Poverty Caucus to talk about the millions of people living in poverty in America. Nearly 45 million Americans live in poverty, and 1 in 5 children are growing up in poverty. The recession may be over for big corporations and the super rich, but for far too many Americans, the recession is actually a depression. Yesterday, the Out of Poverty Caucus held a press conference with organizations working on the front lines with low-income and poor people. We heard stories of more homelessness, long lines at food pantries, and the desperation felt by so many. Our nation's unemployment rate remains at an unacceptably high 9.2%. Millions of Americans who have lost their jobs are finding it harder and harder to find a new one. These new ranks of the long-term unemployed and their families are facing the stark reality of life in poverty for the first time. The ongoing impact of the recession on struggling families and those facing or living in poverty simply must not be ignored. But instead of working to improve the lives of millions of Americans in poverty, the Republican Party continues their drive to plunge our nation into default and our economy over the brink. Speaker Boehner has unveiled yet another Republican plan that fails to do what America needs. His plan fails to end the threat of default. His plan targets the programs aimed at America's most vulnerable, our seniors, our children, and our low-income families, far more draconian cuts. Trying to balance the budget on the backs of the poor is morally wrong. We need a balanced approach that balances targeted cuts with the revenue that we need. We must make sure that we can pay the benefits that we owe to our seniors, protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and safeguard our most vulnerable communities. Mr. Speaker, while the nation's unemployment level remains unacceptably high, for some minority communities, it was double digits even before the recession began. The unemployment rate for African Americans today is recorded at 16.2%, and Latinos recorded at 11.2%. And what many of us have known for a long, long time now, African Americans and Latinos have lost 18 to 20 times their net worth, more so than white Americans, due to structural inequalities, where race is a factor. These numbers are horrific and speak to the larger crisis facing our nation, the jobs crisis. Let me share the story of one American who is looking for a job. Reverend David was laid off from a job as the successful executive director of a faith-based nonprofit that served the disadvantaged and worked to put people on a path to self-sufficiency. Now he is relying on the very safety net programs that he used to connect others to. He diligently job hunts week after week. David and his wife rely on unemployment benefits to make ends meet, and he is worried about what he will do when he reaches 99-week limit of those benefits. The Reverend is not alone. 45 million Americans worry about where they will sleep at night, if their children will eat, what will happen if they need medical attention, and when will they secure a living wage job. We must work together to help the millions of Americans who are still struggling to recover from the Great Recession. As the first order of business, I again call on the Speaker to bring my legislation, H.R. 589, to the floor for an up or down vote immediately. This retroactive emergency unemployment benefits to those long-term unemployed known as 99ers who continue to face uncertainty and hardships. Passing this extension will stimulate our economy, not to mention that it is our moral responsibility to help those in need. But people really want to work. Instead of creating jobs, Republicans are holding our economy hostage, putting forth policies that will create more unemployment and more job loss. Instead of quickly passing a clean debt ceiling vote, the Republicans are marching lockstep to create this default. Instead of supporting the vital human needs programs that will protect our most vulnerable, Republicans are trying to balance the budget on the backs of the poor while maintaining these tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires and big oils. Mr. Speaker, there's no more time for these Republican games. The American people expect us to put partisanship aside to protect our economy and create jobs. The American dream has been a nightmare for the 45 million living in poverty and is turning quickly into a nightmare for millions who are falling from middle income into the ranks of the poor. The bill put forth today by Republicans guarantees this tragic outcome.
From Mississippi.